So, number 35 is Iron Maiden's Power Slave. Big epic Iron Maiden album from 1984. Yes, I mean it's the classic Iron Maiden lineup. I've said this before. You know, the classic Iron Maiden lineup. Steve Harris and Dave Murray, who of course on all the albums, but also Bruce Dickinson on vocals, also Adrian Smith on the other guitar, and Nico McBrain on drums. This is the classic Iron Maiden album that released many of their most acclaimed albums in the 80s. Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And yes, Power Slave tends to be the only one that gives Number of the Beast a run for its money in most people's lists of favourite Maiden albums. And indeed, it is in my top two Iron Maiden albums have turned out to be those two on this list. So, yeah, Power Slave. I mean, for me, it's a bit kind of not so much in the middle, but it starts brilliantly and it ends brilliantly, and that start and that end are so brilliant that that's what lifts the album up into the higher echelons of awesomeness and brilliance and amazing music. It starts with the rollicking Aces High, you know, about the being a RAF pilot in World War II. Aces High, and then you've got 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is a very catchy Iron Maiden song, but a very heavy subject matter about, of course, the Doomsday Clock, you know, and it's like 2 Minutes to Midnight, you know, about impending kind of nuclear war and fallout. This was the 80s, you know, this was a big subject at the time. But yeah, 2 Minutes to Midnight, amazing lyrics, amazing, a catchy Maiden tune, but like I said, heavy in terms of its content, and in some ways its music. 2 Minutes to Midnight, and then, I mean, there's an instrumental called Lost for Words, which is actually very good. I like that instrumental. Then it kind of falls flat for me personally with Flash of the Blade and Duelists and Back in the Village. It's a bit Maiden by numbers at that point. But then, at the end, we have the track Power Slave. You know I love ancient Egypt. This is about Osiris being killed and coming back to life again. But it also seems to be about the pharaohs and how they were treated as gods in human form. But it's a very interesting song. I mean, the thing about Strike from the Grave at the end could be mummies as well. So all these ancient Egyptian themes about death and you know, resurrection, I suppose, get poured into this song. But it's just an amazing, atmospheric, awesome song. The guitar solo in the middle, it does this kind of sad kind of solo and then goes into the fast soloing. I just love those dynamics in the song. You know, lovely chugging kind of riff, a lot of Egyptian flavour to it. It's a brilliant song. But just when you thought that was brilliant, there's Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This epic, long, how many minutes is it? It's not quite 15, I think it's 13 minutes or something. But this big epic Iron Maiden song based on the Coleridge poem, Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Which itself is a mammoth poem that goes pages after pages. It's a big epic tale about this captain of the ship who shoots an albatross, and then it seems like the forces of nature are trying to get revenge. Everyone on the ship dies. He's left alive. There's a point where they all rise to life and start steering the ship back home. Spooky scary because they're basically zombies at that point. And finally, you know, he gets home, they fall dead, and he's okay. But I'm sure that it messages in the poem itself, but certainly Iron Maiden put the spin on it, emphasise it, I think, a bit more about, you know, we must love all things that God made, because of course it's the killing of a bird of good omen that led to all the bad things that happened to the mariner. But it's an epic poem, pages and pages. I read it once in my teens because I was such an Iron Maiden fan. I was like, I've got to read the thing that inspired this song. But the song is epic and it's awesome. I mean, you know, you get all the setup in the verses and stuff at the beginning of the song, which is great. Then you have that big spooky bit in the middle with the creaking ships and this do 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 do. Very atmospheric, very spooky and creepy when it does that bit from the actual poem. There are a couple of bits here where it actually quotes directly the poem. You know, one after one by the star, dogged moon, all that stuff. That's actually from the poem. But that wonderful atmospheric, creepy thing in the middle is amazing. Then, of course, it builds up the thing, and it's like da da da, and it's the mariner blessing all the sea creatures instead of hating them, and then the curse starts to break. Da da da. That's a great moment, and then albatross falls into the sea, da, 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 and then it goes off in this amazing fucking fast instrumental, awesome instrumental after that bit, and then we get back into the normal bit, which does the rest of the story and leads to the end, where it says, you know, we must love all things that God made, and the mariners are sad and wise a man, and the tale goes on and on and on and on. Which, you know, obviously consists of the tale being told and passing on, but I always think it's a bit amusing because, yes, it does go on and on and on, doesn't it? But anyway, Rhyme with Nature Man is amazing. It may be a very long track, but none of it is boring. It's all fucking amazing, to be honest. So, yeah, that's Power Slave. Number 34. Carcass, Necroticism Descanting the Insalubrious. What a title. This was 1991. This is an interesting Carcass album because Carcass are well known really for their early stuff, which was grindcore. The early albums like Putrefaction and Symphonies of Sickness, or they're really well known for an album like Heartwork, which was like the beginning of melodic death metal. This is a transitional album where they were actually straightforward death metal. They're not like any other death metal band when they do straight death metal either, because they have that carcassness about them. Because you've still got the very convoluted, complicated medical terminology in the lyrics and in the song titles. You've still got there's something about Carcass's vocal style on these tracks which is just edgy and more grindcore-ish about them, even when they're doing death metal somehow. But I love this album. I mean, some of the tracks I love the most are In Propagation and Incarnated Solvent Abuse, which part of the appeal is the lyrics as well as the music, but the music's very good as well. But then there's Corporal Jigsaw Quandary, which has the most awesome riff I've heard in any death metal song ever. I just love that song and I could listen to it over and over again. It's just gets me pumped up and I love it. But yeah, In Propagation there's ash to ashes, dust to dust, diluted in water and sprayed on crops. Very interesting lyrics there. And Incarnated Solvent Abuse is a complete classic, wonderful track as well. My favourite Carcass track, perhaps. I mean, I don't know, those three tracks I just mentioned off this album and Buried Dreams of Heartwork, those are my four favourite Carcass tracks. Hands down. But yeah, I love this album. When I want to listen to Carcass, it's this album I go to, which is why it's the highest Carcass album on this list. Only 2 Carcass albums are on this list, but yeah. Number 33. AC/DC's Highway to Hell, a hard rock album, 1979. The last one with the original vocalist Bon Scott, who died of alcohol poisoning. But I think it's one of those choke on own vomit kind of deaths. Very sad. He was an amazing frontman, a lot of charisma. And I mean, this is a hard rock classic. This is like every fan of rock music really should have this album. This and Back in Black, the one after. This was the last album with Bon Scott. It is chock full of classic AC/DC hard rock songs. Highway to Hell, of course, the title track. But also a lot of songs about sex, to be honest. But Girls Got Rhythm, Touch Too Much, all that. It's a great album. I mean, it is very enjoyable from start to finish. There's barely a bad track on it. It's pretty much all awesome. But which I can't say about Back in Black, which although it's higher on this list, because when the songs I like on there I like so much. Nevertheless, this one. Nevertheless, there are some moments on Back in Black where I'm just like not really feeling it. Whereas Highway to Hell, to be honest, every fucking track is amazing on here. And it's a hard rock classic, and you need to own it. If you care at all about, I mean, fair enough, if you're into metal and not really into hard rock at all, then you won't like it. But if you have any interest in loud, amplified, basic, ballsy rock and roll, most of which is about sex and women, but the rock's really hard. I mean, if you care about like rock and roll and like basic rock music at all, you should own this album, because it's amazing for that sort of thing. It is pretty perfect for that sort of thing, and AC/DC are great, and this album is one of the albums where they are so great. It's just a lot of fun and very enjoyable. Number 32 is Opeth, Blackwater Park. The only Opeth album on here, because I'm not actually familiar with their other albums. I do have My Arms, Your Hers, but I got it very recently, so I'm not that familiar with it yet. I've never had any of their other albums, so it could only be those two that would end up on the list anyway. This is Blackwater Park. This is the first Opeth album I got, and it blew me away pretty much. I mean, the first track, Leper Affinity, blew me away. It took me a while to get into the rest of the album. Nowadays, Drapery Falls is the song on this album that I absolutely love to death, but I am now appreciating pretty much most of the album. And it was my first introduction to Opeth, and it blew me away how good they are. Because they are progressive. They have interesting dynamics and interesting sounds in their music. They're very progressive in approach, but they are heavy as well. Dark and bleak, and there is a track on here called Bleak. You know, with the growling vocals as well in the heavier moments. And then they have these more melodic moments. But they're very atmospheric and very deep and very varied and interesting and kind of melancholy and very impressive musically, and it's a great album. I don't know how to explain how great it is. You have to hear it to realise, but I mean, it is the Opeth album everyone goes on about. Some people have said it's a bit overrated. I don't think it is overrated, because I think it is genius. 31. Led Zeppelin 3. The third Led Zeppelin album, released in 1970. It's the one where they went folky. Yeah, on their first two albums, Led Zeppelin were doing basically blues rock, slash hard rock, of course, that had moments of folkiness, like Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You on the first album, and like Ramble On the second album. But mostly those albums were blues rock slash hard rock. On Led Zeppelin 3, they really went all out on the kind of acousticy, folky, kind of mellow side of their sound, but there's still the hard rock kind of numbers on there, especially at the beginning, because you've got Immigrant Song, which is the first Viking metal song. Not really, because that's a sort of a style of its own, but it was one of the earliest hard rock and heavy metal songs about Vikings, and it's a brilliant tune, you know, and all that. Come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs blow. Hammer of the gods. Valhalla, I am coming. Brilliant song. Then you've got the kind of acousticy Friends. The greatest thing you ever can do is trade a smile with someone who's blue. I don't know. I used to really like that song when I was younger. Maybe not quite as much now. I used to like the way it segued into Celebration Day as well. Does that weird thing. Face is cracked from smiling. All it is that she's been hiding. And I really like Celebration Day, by the way. It's like a party song. I mean, it's called Celebration Day. It's like kind of stomping tune. It's a bit funky. Yeah, Celebration Day. Then of course we've got the amazing bluesy ballad thing that is Since I've Been Loving You, which is just amazing. Every time I listen to that song, it's amazing, and it never disappoints, and it's just epic sorrow in music in the most accomplished and emotionally satisfying way. I don't know, it's an amazing track. Then you got Out on the Tiles, which is okay, and that's the first half, and then the second half is a lot more folky and acoustic. You got the Gallows Pole track, which I think is a traditional song that they reworked. Kind of cool tale of someone who's going to be hung, and he's like, oh, wait, don't hang me yet, my brother's coming with some silver and stuff, and then my sister, he wants his sister to like seduce the hangman. So it's always attempt at bribery and seduction to get off of being hung, of course. But this hangman is uncorruptible and hangs him anyway. But it's kind of cool. Then you got Tangerine, which I love. Oh, so many broken hearts have been nursed with that song for me. Tangerine. To think of us again, and I do. And then I love that song. But even more than that, I love That's the Way, which is a lovely acoustic folky number, very jangly kind of. But it's about, it tells the story of this kid whose best friend goes all hippie-ish and cares about the environment, and his mum's like, you know, I don't want you hanging around with him anymore, you know, because he's a hippie and it's bad. But it's got this real environmental message to it. It's like, you know, this friend of his sees him sometimes and he's like crying over flowers or fish dying in the rivers or whatever, and then the last little verse turns it round that it's that kid talking to everyone else, sort of saying, you know, I don't know what to say about it when all your ears have turned away. A good kind of environmental message to it. I don't like the last two tracks on here. I always finish with That's the Way, and then I know some people really like the last two tracks, but I don't. But that's just me. But Led Zeppelin 3, it is a great album. It's my second favourite Zeppelin album. There's another one which is very obvious and very famous and well known and popular, which is higher up on this list, very high on this list actually. But Led Zeppelin 3 though, bloody brilliant as well.